Hi guys, I'm here with Chuck Patton, the person who directed many tmnt episodes.
How you doing?
Fine, thank you. Um, so the first question is, did you watch the previous versions of the Turtles?
Um, yeah, I have. I watched them. I was more aware of the comic. I admit, and this is going to be a real confessional. I wasn't a fan of the animated series. So, I I like the TV series. I like the comic book much more. I was much more aware of it, and I being an ex comic book person myself, Turtles was such a phenomenon. It was hard not to know about it. The animated series I thought the look of it was a lot more cuddlier. I know it was for a younger audience, and I just wasn't not kind of a fan of that stuff then, even though I was working in animation.
How did you hear about the TV show?
How did I get on the TV show? That is interesting. That is I'm going to try to keep my answers short because I can tell you a long stories. Um, honestly, when Turtles went off the air, I think it was a good 10 years before it was decided to bring it back, and then it was how they wanted to bring it back. Um, Both Eastman and Laird were not together on the idea of it. I believe that at that time, Laird and Eastman made a deal where Eastman would back away from the property and Laird would take control of it. And I don't understand. I can't explain all of it. It's been a long, long time. But when Peter was now the sole controlling force on Turtles, the first thing he wanted to do was to make it closer to the comic books. And that really made a big difference. Everyone who were after the property, everyone loved Turtles. Everybody wanted Turtles. Turtles made a lot of money. But here was a different idea of, ooh, let's make it more edgy like the comic book. By that time, the live action movie had been out. And I thought, and now I was a big fan of the live action movie. I thought that was closer to how I saw the Turtles. It was closer to the comic book. So when the people who were involved with the production, and again, I won't go into the long story about who was in production with it, but it went through a couple of different hands before the people who called me eventually became the studio. The first thing they told me was that when they called me up was we want this to be closer to the comic book. We want this to be darker, not so dark, but edgier, a little different. And I was like, oh, now I'm interested. This is good. And because I had done Spawn at the time, they thought, yes, you would understand edgy. And so that's how I was called on the show.
And was it easy to direct the episodes?
Yes, I was going to direct all the episodes. That was the well. There was a strange thing about it because normally when you start a show, most shows are started because I was living in Los Angeles. That's where all the American animation was done at the time. We would send out our animation to be done overseas, but the actual pre-production, as we call it, the creation of the show was usually done in LA. Well, when I got called for Turtles, the big problem was that because Peter didn't like to fly and he lived in the Midwest, and the company who had Turtles was in New York, that they decided to produce Turtles in New York. So that scared away a lot of people. They didn't want to leave. They didn't want to move from LA to New York. I had lived in New York for to start my comic book career, so it was even I wasn't even that tempted. So I took a while before I thought about it, and then I was convinced that this was a beautiful opportunity. I wanted to see Turtles brought back. I became more of a fan than I thought I would. I wanted to get that comic book feeling back into Turtles. I wanted it to feel like the original, and I thought, it is great to be able to do Turtles in New York, and that's what convinced me. Because of course, Turtles are from New York, so that's what happened. I
Uh, did,
went to New York.
did you watch the TV show at the time?
I saw it. Well, here's the thing. Once we started producing the show, once we started seeing the scripts, and I was working with the the studio producer, Lloyd Goldfine. And Lloyd was a huge fan of all Turtles, and as well as a good comic book fan. And we gelled immediately. And we both were saying how we respect, there was a lot of the old TV series of respect. We did love the Utroms. There's something about the Utroms that are fun, the original cartoon Utroms. And we were saying how much, well, they're a little different than the Utroms in the comic book, but everybody loves the old Utroms. We knew we weren't going to get Rocksteady and Bebop. I forgot why, but we both decided, well, if we want to make Turtles a little edgier, Rocksteady and Bebop is a little more cartoonish. And so, again, taking it back to the comic book, we decided to stay with just the things you saw in the comic book at the time. And so Lloyd has seen more of the animated series than I had, the original animated series. So I would follow his lead, but I read a lot of the comic books. So that's why it was like, it was good that I wasn't, that was the main thing, was that once we decided that, we knew we only wanted to we didn't want it to look like anything of the old cartoons. So that's why we didn't really look at it. We were aware of it, but we didn't look at it.
Do you get to watch the episodes before they came out?
Oh yeah, of course, yes. Oh yeah. The process. I mean, I saw everything. Of course, I was being a director. Well, that was the thing. When I was brought there were so many artists who have tried out. They didn't have. The reason they brought me is that the directors that they had, they couldn't agree with. They didn't agree with what they wanted to do. They really didn't have the experience to put the show together. I had done a couple of shows, several shows by that time. So again, I did Spawn. I had done other shows, G.I. Joe. So I knew how to put a show together. And so that meant that as a director, I see everything. So I saw it from pieces of paper, drawn on tiny pieces of paper to big pieces of paper, to color, to film. And then, yes, so to answer your question, I saw everything from start to finish.
Who's your favorite person to work with on the show?
Oh my God, who's my favorite person to work with? All right, I'm going to take a very diplomatic answer, okay? But it's true. I loved everybody who I worked with on the show. Honestly, I would say my own crew, who many of them I've never worked with before, because I picked everybody who were able to come to New York or who actually lived in New York. And I was very, very proud of them. We were very, very close. We were very tight at work and after work. And I honestly could not have done this show without them. So I to this day, we're close friends. So every one of that crew were my favorite people, from the artists to the PAs, that's production assistants. And even Lloyd and I really enjoyed working with him. So I honestly, as corny as it sounds, I really loved all of those people.
How long did it take to make an episode?
Oh my God, that's a tough one. We were late. In other words, the show was already supposed to have been put into production. So when I came on, it was already behind schedule. So I think, and I'm really bad with these times. You're asking me something that was almost 20 years ago. So I'm gonna be a little off on this. I know that to do an episode, it takes normally 4 to 6 weeks to draw a storyboard.
Cool.
And from that, then the actual recordings usually takes a week. And we weren't able to do what most animation studios would like to do, which is record ahead. We actually recorded after we did the artwork, off the scripts. So we had to make sure that what was said off the scripts could match the artwork. Because usually in animation, you record first, and then the artist, can listen to the recording and then draw appropriately. So there's a lot of adjusting. So by itself, that 4 to 6 weeks I talked about, that's just to begin the storyboard. But after you do the recording, then you have to go back into the storyboard, make sure that the recording hooks up Then you create what we call an animatic. That takes, so let's put it this way. To do one episode, it takes about 16 weeks.